From the first frame of Pretty Woman, something electric crackled between Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. So much so that audiences everywhere swore it couldn't be just acting. We've all felt it. That spark you can't fake. A privately shared gravity that lingers long after the camera's cut. For decades, speculation swirled. Were these two Hollywood icons simply perfect co-stars, or was there a genuine connection that began in that small studio room back in Now, at 56, Julia Roberts has quietly confirmed what everyone suspected, and it isn't scandal, nor the kind of tabloid drama you might expect. It's something deeper, far more human, a friendship built on trust, kindness, and an unspoken understanding that shaped two careers and defined an era of romance on screen. Imagine stepping onto a studio lot for the first time, bright lights aimed squarely at your future. Julia was only 21, eager, raw, carrying a smile that seemed both genuine and unreachable all at once. Richard, nearly 2 decades older, had weathered Hollywood's peaks and valleys. He was known, accomplished, and quietly wary of repeating the same charming roles. Yet when Gary Marshall set out to cast Edward Lewis opposite Julia's Vivian Ward, he sensed that magic could happen if he chose wisely. He needed chemistry that transcended dialogue, a glow that cameras could catch and audiences would believe. Gary saw it at the audition. Julia's uncertainty met Richard's steady warmth, and something unplanned simmered beneath the surface. Their very first meeting was simple. No scripts, no characters, just two actors sizing each other up in a quiet corner of the lot. Julia arrived nervous but determined. Richard offered the kind of gentle presence that immediately calmed her. They spoke only for minutes, yet by the end, Marshall knew he had his leads. When the director handed them a brief scene to read, Julia dove in full throttle, so alive that Richard smiled, half in character and half himself. He reached into his jacket pocket, produced a folded slip of paper, and handed it to her. On it was a single word, yes. That unscripted moment, pure, instinctive, became the heartbeat of the entire film. As cameras rolled, that unspoken bond grew. Between takes, crew members noticed how Julia would lean toward Richard's quiet advice, how he'd never overwhelm but always steady her when nerves threatened to pull her under. He'd say almost nothing, just a soft word here, a gentle nod there, but it was enough to pull her back into the moment. When the famed piano scene emerged, it wasn't in the script at all. Richard sat and began to finger the keys. Julia wandered over and their laughter melded seamlessly with the tune. Marshall whispered, "Keep it," and that spontaneity became one of cinema's most beloved romantic beats. Yet during all this magic, neither actor confirmed the deeper whispers. Journalists asked, tabloids probed, but they protected that shared secret with quiet deflection. Julia smiled and said, "You can't fake that kind of trust," while Richard offered his trademark reserved response. Sometimes when you meet someone, you just know. Their words teased but never revealed, and the audience fell even harder under their spell. After Pretty Woman's dizzying success, everything changed. Julia's face was suddenly everywhere. Magazine covers, floodlights, press hounds at every door. She went from ingenue to global star overnight, unprepared for the chaos that followed. Richard, seasoned by fame's glare, retreated to quieter projects, seeking solace far from the glare. Yet even as their paths diverged, Julia chasing dramatic roles, Richard exploring introspective, sometimes European art films, the memory of that initial spark endured. Interviews over the years kept circling back to that question. Did you ever? Each time, Julia's voice would soften at Richard's name, her eyes reflecting a warmth that spoke louder than any statement. She often remarked, "He made me feel seen," a confession that set hearts racing without spilling a single scandalous detail. It was the kind of admission that hinted at something profound, a connection not built on fleeting passion, but on a foundation of genuine care. Fast forward to 1999, nearly a decade later, when Paramount greenlit Runaway Bride. The world clamored for a reunion, not merely of characters, but of those two souls who once ignited a generation's romantic dreams. When Gary Marshall reached out to Richard, hesitation flickered in his eyes. When he learned Julia was already on board, his answer came swiftly, "If she's in, I'm in." That one line, as casual as a coffee invitation, set the stage for a fresh chapter in their shared story. On set in Maryland, their reunion wasn't a forced reset of old chemistry, it was a rediscovery, a matured, deeper resonance that came from years of unspoken memories. Crew members spoke of moments when they'd sit together in silence, conversation unnecessary because their shared history filled every pause. Laughter returned, yes, but softer, seasoned with the comfort that only time can bring. When a wedding runaway scene ended in Julia's laughter collapsing onto the floor, Richard's steady grin anchored her once more. "You light up the whole room," he said simply, unscripted, heartfelt, reclaimed. The press frenzy that followed their second collaboration still asked, "Was it real?" Julia offered her familiar deflection. "We were real enough on screen." Richard chuckled and added, "That's all anyone really needs to know." Their deflections protected something sacred, yet every glance between them spoke volumes. This wasn't merely a clever performance, it was two spirits finding their way back to a rare, unbreakable bond. Over the years since, Julia Roberts has chosen roles with intention, stepped back from fame's relentless chase, and built a life grounded in family and purpose. Richard Gere has delved into humanitarian work, spirituality, and projects that resonate with his deeper values. They rarely cross paths publicly, yet the question of their connection never fully fades. Whenever anniversaries roll around or a reunion rumor surfaces, Julia's expression softens, and she offers a line that both answers and deepens the mystery. "He was kind. That's it." In that three-word confession lies the true revelation: kindness, the most overlooked form of intimacy in an industry fueled by spectacle. It was kindness in a studio room, on a bustling soundstage, in a quiet hallway, small gestures that built a fortress of trust impervious to fame's noise. When Julia Roberts, now 56, finally confirmed what so many suspected, she didn't unleash sensational headlines. Instead, she honored that quiet kindness, that genuine friendship, reminding us that chemistry on screen can spring from the simplest seeds of human decency. Yet even as the world obsessed over their past, few realized that Julia's moment of confirmation would come not in a tabloid, but in a softly lit interview room on a quiet evening in Los Angeles, a decade after Runaway Bride. The cameras were set to capture her discussing her latest role, yet what unfolded felt more like an intimate fireside chat than a press junket. Julia sat poised, fingers lightly brushing the rim of her teacup as if testing its warmth, and allowed a calm smile to settle over her features. When the host leaned forward and asked, "You've always been private about your chemistry with Richard Gere. Any regrets keeping that bond off camera?" Julia paused, her gaze drifting momentarily to the window where city lights twinkled like distant memories. A gentle hush fell over the studio as she exhaled, then spoke softly. "I never saw it as hiding. It was protecting something fragile, something I might have lost if it became a story." She described the sensation of that first meeting, the unspoken welcome in Richard's eyes, and how each brief note of gratitude, like the tissue handed after an emotional take, built a trust neither fully understood until years later. Her voice grew tender as she recalled their silent lunches on set, two strangers creating a sanctuary amid Hollywood's chaos. "It wasn't about romance or headlines," she explained. "It was about kindness." The host pressed on, inviting her to define what kindness looked like in that whirlwind world. Julia's answer felt like a confession. "It was small gestures, Richard waiting until I was ready before walking into a scene, a folded note reminding me that someone saw me beyond the role. Those moments whispered, 'You belong here.'" In that studio, her words hung between them like the very unspoken language she once shared with Richard. She revealed how he steadied her when she questioned her own talent, how his quiet presence anchored her through long days of uncertain takes. "People think chemistry is fireworks," she said, "but real connection is a steady flame that keeps you warm." The audience, both in studio and online, leaned in as if drawn by an invisible thread. Social media lit up almost instantly. Hashtags surged, jawed Julia and Richard, real chemistry, kindness first. Clips of her interview began trending before the program faded to black. Fans flooded comment sections with memories of their favorite Pretty Woman moments, the steel knife necklace, the unplanned piano duet, and marveled at how those scenes carried an undercurrent of something far more genuine than mere acting. Bloggers dissected every pause and sigh from the interview, each nuance amplified by newfound context. Critics who once speculated about secret romances were momentarily silenced by the depth of her revelation. Magazines dedicated entire spreads to analyzing the power of kindness in celebrity culture, while YouTubers framed Julia's admission as a turning point in how we understand on-screen partnerships. Some even argued that this confession would reshape casting decisions, pushing directors to seek actors whose off-camera respect for each other fostered authenticity. In every corner of the internet, the same question echoed: could kindness become the new ticket to cinematic magic? Amid this digital chorus, Julia remained remarkably unflustered, as though she had long since anticipated the world's reaction. She shifted slightly in her chair and offered one final thought. "Trust is an unglamorous word, but it's everything. Our performances were only as strong as the trust that underpinned them." The camera held on her face, capturing the quiet conviction behind her eyes. That frame alone carried more weight than any tabloid headline ever could. It demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful confirmations come not from explosive revelations, but from the simple courage to honor what truly matters. As the interview wrapped, a soft piano riff underscored the closing scene, as if to remind viewers of those iconic moments decades ago. Julia rose, the studio lights catching the faint silver at her temples, and paused. Then, with a graceful nod, she looked directly into the lens and said, "He was kind," and that made all the difference. No additional flourish was needed. The camera cut away, leaving her words to resonate. Kindness, trust, quiet understanding, these had always been the secret ingredients behind the magic of their shared on-screen moments. From the moment Julia's words hit the airwaves, something shifted. Not just in fan conversations, but in the very way Hollywood thinks about on-screen chemistry. Overnight, casting directors began whispering about the Roberts Gere standard, a shorthand for pairing actors whose off-camera respect and kindness could ignite a film with unspoken authenticity. Soon, social media challenges popped up inviting pairs of friends to reenact that iconic piano scene, sparking millions of amateur clips under kindness chemistry. Critics praised the trend, noting that Julia's simple confession had ignited a cultural pivot. We no longer craved manufactured drama, but sought the warmth of real connection, even if that connection only existed on camera. Industry insiders jumped on board. One respected producer told Variety, "After Julia's interview, we've seen an uptick in actors requesting chemistry reads over lunch rather than on the soundstage. They want to feel the other person's support before the script even arrives." On the lot of a new rom-com, producers arranged informal dinners for leads, replicating the Roberts Gere tactic of quiet lunches and shared anecdotes. Directors discovered that when actors enter a scene carrying memories of genuine kindness, their performances take on an unrepeatable sparkle. Suddenly, what once felt like fringe speculation about off-screen friendships became a cornerstone of casting strategy. Meanwhile, fan communities thrived. Forums that once archived behind-the-scenes stills now hosted long threads dissecting how Julia's revelation reframed every look in Pretty Woman. That glance at the boutique scene, one superfan wrote, wasn't just scripted desire, it was gratitude for someone who believed in her. Other threads compared modern duos, Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana, to the Roberts Gere blueprint, rating their off-camera rapport on scales of trust, comfort, and laughter. The conversation felt less like idle gossip and more like a collective search for genuine warmth in an age of glossy facades. Meanwhile, Julia's and Richard's names began appearing in unexpected places. A blockbuster animation studio credited their trust-first approach when announcing a voiceover pairing designed to evoke natural intimacy between characters. A new acting school module taught scene study through friendship labs, where students rehearsed while sharing personal stories, inspired directly by the stories Julia shared about lunch table confidences. And on the red carpet at the next Golden Globes, presenters paid tribute. "Tonight we celebrate nominations from actors whose off-camera kindness shines through," they announced, a subtle nod to the quiet power Julia Roberts had reminded us all to cherish. For Richard, the wave of adulation stirred a quiet smile. He'd long retreated from tabloid battlegrounds, preferring to channel his energy into philanthropy and spiritual practice. Yet now he received letters from aspiring performers thanking him for modeling a new kind of celebrity behavior, one where gentle support mattered as much as box office draws. He once mused in a rare interview, "I never set out to define chemistry. I just tried to be present, to respect a fellow actor's process. If that created something memorable, then I'm honored." His humility only fueled the industry's fascination, reinforcing the idea that brilliance on screen often starts with a simple willingness to listen. In classrooms, on TikTok, on studio backlots, Julia's confirmation took on a life of its own. It became a lodestar for creatives yearning for authenticity, a testament that the most compelling scenes emerge when actors dare to be vulnerable beyond the script. Directors now dissect kindness chemistry reels during pre-production meetings, searching for that spark of real humanity. And while Pretty Woman and Runaway Bride remain indelible artifacts of their time, Julia's revelation has ensured that their legacy doesn't just rest on nostalgia, it lives on as a guiding principle for an entire generation of storytellers hungry for connection that transcends fiction. As the industry embraced the concept of kindness as the secret ingredient for chemistry, casting dynamics shifted rapidly. Directors began holding informal coffee meetings before auditions, echoing the quiet lunches Julia described. Agents now pitch potential pairings based on shared values rather than box office history alone. A high-profile romantic comedy currently filming in Vancouver exemplifies this new trend. Its lead actors started their collaboration with a 2-day retreat at a rustic cabin. They spent hours cooking meals together and sharing childhood stories around an open fire. By the time cameras rolled, their on-screen intimacy felt effortless and spontaneous. Crew members whispered about witnessing fleeting glances and comfortable silences that mirrored famous Julia and Richard moments. At a recent film festival, star-studded panels dissected the power of genuine off-camera bonds. Actors from the breakout film recounted how a simple practice of writing appreciative notes before key scenes transformed their performances. They credited this approach directly to the lessons gleaned from Julia Roberts' confession. Online workshops for up-and-coming performers now offer modules on nurturing trust with co-stars. Students practice nonverbal communication exercises designed to build empathy and mutual support. One workshop leader, a former casting director, explained that genuine warmth often transcends scripted dialogue. Industry podcasts dedicate episodes to exploring how moments of real kindness can become iconic film sequences. Listeners tune in eager to discover practical advice on creating authentic connections under the glare of production lights. Social media continues to amplify these ideas with millions of posts tagged kindness chemistry. TikTok influencers remount famous Pretty Woman scenes, highlighting moments where genuine care shines through. New reels juxtapose the original clips with behind-the-scenes reenactments that underscore the actors' supportive gestures. Each share and comment further cements the notion that real trust forms the backbone of unforgettable storytelling. Meanwhile, Julia's and Richard's influence reaches beyond the entertainment sphere. In educational psychology conferences, speakers reference their partnership as a case study on collaborative success. Experts argue that the principles of kindness-driven rapport have applications in team building across industries. Corporate retails and tech startups adopt similar strategies, encouraging colleagues to bond over empathy-building exercises. They credit these approaches with boosting morale and creative innovation in high-pressure environments. Back on set, the ripple effect continues to inspire seasoned performers. One veteran actor recently shared that he now carries small handwritten affirmations for younger co-stars. He believed these tiny tokens provided reassurance similar to the notes Julia described receiving from Richard. Another actress confided that when she felt doubtful before emotional scenes, her co-star's quiet thumbs up in the driver's seat renewed her confidence. Such gestures, once rare behind closed doors, are becoming celebrated hallmarks of professional courtesy. At a marquee theater in New York, a special screening honored timeless film duos who embodied the spirit of Roberts and Gere. The evening included a panel of industry veterans who dissected the subtext of classic romantic sequences. They traced how small, authentic interactions, eye contact, lingering pauses, gentle touches, captivated audiences for generations. In her pre-recorded message, Julia expressed gratitude for the ongoing conversation about kindness in art. She reiterated that while their films sparked joy, it was the genuine respect off-camera that made the magic possible. Richard, via a short video, described his surprise at how a simple gesture could shape a cultural movement. He urged aspiring artists to remember that vulnerability paired with empathy often outshines bravado. As fan conventions pack theaters and community centers, attendees clamor for workshops on the art of trust. Sign-ups for masterclasses led by stunts coordinators, dialogue coaches, and intimacy directors have soared. A headline in the industry journal read, "From Pretty Woman to Policy Change, How Kindness Became Hollywood's New Requisite." Film students reference this shift in term papers and thesis projects exploring the human element in performance art. Even costume designers speak of wanting to create environments that foster comfort, such as cozy lounge areas and communal tables. In makeup trailers, discussions now include how lighting and personal space can impact an actor's sense of security. Cinematographers consider shooting sequences where performers can interact organically rather than hitting precise marks. Such decisions prioritize capturing authentic reactions and subtle expressions over rigid choreography. Meanwhile, Julia and Richard's legacies intertwine with philanthropic initiatives. Their joint advocacy for mental health in creative spaces has led to an annual summit on emotional resilience. Attendees include directors, producers, actors, and crew members dedicated to cultivating supportive environments. Workshops focus on stress management, active listening, and boundary setting under demanding schedules. These gatherings reinforce how kindness-driven collaboration improves both morale and final productions. Backstage, participants share stories of how Julia's confession catalyzed new perspectives on teamwork. They talk about how respecting one another's processes can unlock deeper performances. In one moving session, attendees watched a montage of Roberts and Gere's silent, tender moments. The room fell into a reflective hush as they witnessed the power of unspoken connection. A host speaker noted that these examples illustrate how art mimics life, and life flourishes when humans honor one another. With every tribute screening, podcast episode, and viral clip, the narrative of kindness as cinematic catalyst grows richer. Julia's simple confirmation at 56 didn't just settle old speculations. It opened a door to a more human-centered approach to storytelling. It reminded us that trust and empathy aren't just soft skills, they're the very foundation of memorable art. As the conversation continues across stages, screens, and classrooms, the world seems eager to embrace this shift. After all, it's a story as timeless as any romance, the story of two people meeting and choosing to be gentle to one another. In the quiet aftermath of the cultural storm that Julia Roberts' confession kicked off, the world seemed to catch its breath, as if pausing to reconsider what truly makes art unforgettable. Actors who had once chased big budgets and flashy set pieces found themselves drawn instead toward scripts that demanded vulnerability, humility, and genuine listening. In writers' rooms, producers championed characters defined not by glamorous wardrobes or millionaire lifestyles, but by simple acts of compassion and moments of unguarded honesty. Scenes that once hinged on grand declarations of love were now rewoven around a soft exchange of gratitude or a supportive glance, nodding to the power of kindness. It was a profound shift, Hollywood's machinery turning toward humanity, one heartfelt beat at a time. At an intimate screening in Los Angeles, Julia sat among a small audience, watching her performance on the big screen with a clarity only hindsight can offer. Scenes that once felt like obligations, choreographed for mass appeal, now carried new weight. She noticed how Edward's pause before handing Vivian the necklace echoed the same deliberate gentleness he had shown her off-camera decades earlier. She saw how a fleeting furrow of his brow during a climactic scene mirrored a moment of genuine concern he'd offered with a reassuring tap on her shoulder when she'd felt overwhelmed. Each scene unfolded as both fiction and fragment of real shared history. For Julia, this re-examination was bittersweet, a reminder that growth often arrives wrapped in nostalgia's bitter tang. Meanwhile, Richard, thousands of miles away at a humanitarian forum, reflected on the unexpected journey from on-screen sparring partner to off-screen icon of kindness-driven collaboration. In a keynote speech, he spoke not of fame or fortune, but of the small daily choices that build trust, arriving on time, listening with open posture, offering encouragement without audience. He talked about how Julia's youth had reminded him to embrace curiosity and energy, how their partnership taught him to accept someone else's light without hiding under his own glow. His words resonated beyond the film community, inspiring workshops on leadership and emotional intelligence in boardrooms around the globe. The quiet conviction in his voice seemed to underscore every syllable. Real change often starts with a simple decision to be present for another person. Fans, too, entered a new phase of relationship with their favorite movies. Online communities shifted from endless speculation about off-screen romance to thoughtful discussions on casting and collaborative synergy. Film clubs hosted kindness screenings, pairing Pretty Woman with documentaries on trust building in organizations. Viewers wrote personal essays about how witnessing Roberts and Gere's bond had helped them re-evaluate relationships in their own lives. Letters poured in to broadcasters, people sharing stories of how a whispered word of support or small act of generosity had altered their personal trajectory. For many, the films became more than entertainment. They became catalysts for finding compassion in personal and professional spheres.